welcome to this episode of EdTalks. Today we are diving into the world of learning experience design. I'm your host, Nina Horvat, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Tim Logan, experience design partner at KAOSPILOT. Tim brings 30 years of expertise in designing impactful experiences across Europe, North America, and Africa. Currently, he's leading project at KAOSPILOT in Denmark and the Antares project in Germany, where his work is creating secure digital learning systems and transforming education in German high schools. So today we'll explore emotional journeys in learning, practical tools to design with emotions in mind, and how co-creation with learners can unlock new levels of engagement. So let's dive in. Hi, Tim. It's so lovely to see you today.
Yeah, hi, so great to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, I was happy to do so. So I'm super excited for this conversation. However, before we go to the main agenda, we always start from rapid fire questions that we summarize by the end of the season. So are you ready to start with that?
Yes, hit me.
Lovely. So what book or resource can you recommend on educational topic?
Yeah, so I have a book that and like because I don't call myself an L&D person as such. It is related to experience design, and the book is called The Age of Experiences by Benjamin Klein Honeycutt. And it's really a deep dive into the phenomena of the experiences that has risen over the last 50 years or so. But then it goes very deep into the positive psychology around experiences. Highly recommended, and it is actually super relevant for creating learning experiences as well. So I would very much recommend that book. Yeah.
We're going to dive a little bit deeper a bit later, so I'm super excited for that and
Yeah.
already can't wait to cover the topic of experiences with you. But for now, the second rapid fire question is who do you recommend to follow and invite to this podcast from L&D experts?
Yes, I have two for you. So one of them is he's also from the Chaos Pilot. His name is Simon Kavanagh, and he's really developed the learning program, the way the learning is structured at the Chaos Pilot School, using this idea of learning arches. So he's like the first time I heard him speak, it was like an hour long, and it really was just a lecture. It wasn't even really interactive, but it was my face was melting. It was just like it was pure gold that was coming out of his mouth. So I'd highly recommend him. And my second recommendation would be Anna Maria Dorgo, who actually runs or is a kind of initiator of the L&D Shakers and group on LinkedIn. And I've worked with her on one of the trainings that I run in experience design. Amazing person to work with. And yeah, I'm sure she'd really bring a lot of value here to your show.
Absolutely. Thank you for your recommendations.
Yep.
Next one, could you share a memorable failure or a setback in your educational L&D? I know that you don't count yourself as an L&D person.
Yes.
However, how did you overcome any of the setbacks?
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing that, like, it's kind of a setback that I had is I had been working with um, product design, digital user experience for quite a long time. And I suddenly found myself, like about 8 years ago, I realized that I got to a point where I was really terrified of public speaking. And but I needed to be running meetings, but I was really not, it really wasn't working for me at all. And so I literally just went out, and there was a friend of mine was organizing a TEDx conference, and I just went to them and said, look, I didn't want to give a talk, but I basically said I would like to host this event for you. And I just went out there, and I was terrified, and every part of me was shaking, but I just did it. And then I sort of did that on repeat, and I had a couple of like local events where I was able to like do this hosting and moderation. And I just pulled myself through it, I just made myself do it. And this is like now I'm pretty happy. I can get up on stage, I can facilitate groups, and it just really took that practice, like getting it, embodying it was the way to get me through. So yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this story. I think that many of our listeners can relate to it. Me, certainly. I'm definitely on the same page with you, and there was time that I would do anything but host a podcast, for instance.
Mhm.
So
Right.
even though not connected directly to L&D journey, but it's such an important experience that you shared right
Mhm.
now that I think many of us face. So lastly, if you had to give just one piece of advice to someone who is starting their career in L&D education, designing experiences, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it would be about like aiming for impact. So if you are responsible for developing trainings or delivering trainings, look for the ultimate impact that you can create for your learners and users. So even if the subject matter is something like skills at a certain level using a certain kind of system, or it's the knowledge and the skills at that level aren't the things which are going to be motivating the learners. So you have to aim higher and aim for something, aim like a high value within the look for what is really going to be motivating the learners, which is finding some kind of something around their identity, some kind of the purpose, look for that real deeper impact. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. With that, we are going to move to the main part of our conversation. And here I think that no one will explain the experience better than you. So the floor is yours. Why design an experience? Very simple question in a nutshell.
Yes. When we're designing experiences, we're really thinking about emotion. And there's this great quote from Maya Angelou. I probably said it before. You've probably heard me say it on another podcast, but it's this one about people will forget what you say and they'll forget what you do, but they won't forget how you make them feel. And really, feelings are at the heart of the experiences we have. So we are continually in a relationship with our own emotions, and experience design is about acknowledging that and then step by step building designing the experience for the emotions that we want people to be feeling through it. And and then you layer on top of that, what do you want them to be thinking? What do you want them to be learning? And then, okay, then what are the actual steps that need to be taken to guide them through that journey? And experience design is really about thinking about all of that. So what are the challenges? What are the opportunities at every point in a
Mhm.
person's experience?
Thanks. For someone who is who is hearing about any of this for the first time, I think it would be quite natural for us to mention a couple of examples. For instance, is
Mhm.
there any topic that you think that this approach fits the most, or some topics that do not match at all?
Yeah, I mean, like we're on a L&D education podcast here, and education is a prime target for
Mhm.
experience design. Um, because education is ultimately, or can be, maybe it's not a lot of the time, but it can be transformative. And in order to um, guide those transformations in people, you need to really be staging an experience for them in a meaningful way. So I would say that um, any kind of learning where somebody is trying to improve themselves, then you definitely need to have some kind of element of experience design in there for that. But you can also think about like, I mean, experiences are also just an economic offering.
Mhm.
So you can think of them as there are products and there are services and there are experiences. And there's a lot of this in the kind of entertainment world. You think of like fun fairs and this idea of like, going on a ride. it's designed, right? It's not just about being strapped into a seat and taking around around a roller coaster. There is a design to how you enter it, what happens as you're going through it. This is a really kind of clear example of how experience design is relevant in entertainment, right? And then, but also education, super important too.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Once I remember myself, I've mentioned this example to you in private, but now it's time to share with the public. A couple of years ago, I used to work in the company which where L&D department has been so overwhelmed that you wouldn't think of creating a learning experience. You would think of accommodating some business goal, let's say. And most of the times, these goals were to create content fast and something that can be updated really easily also. So for those of us who, like me, felt overwhelmed with the tasks and probably even lost that, desire to create experience that matters, to create that impact that you mentioned, is there any tip that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you have to um, start to design that experience for yourself in some way. So, what is how can I put this? You are in a position where you're probably not the decision maker about
Mhm.
things, and but you want to be getting people on board. So, I would say that in a case like this, you want to be learning about how to do stakeholder engagement. So if you believe in the change, because quite often you will be seeing it at the front line and you will be knowing that the training that you're doing may not be impactful, it may not be engaging. So what you need to do is learn how to actually um, engage the stakeholders in making the necessary changes. And I guess one of the obvious things around this is you have to do good measurement of the results. So you have to really have some good, are we actually getting the impact that we want to get? And are we serving, um, rather than it's just about, okay, we need to get these people skilled up and running and working on this system, but what is the actual overall business goal? And yeah, so I would say try first onboard stakeholders, use it as an exercise yourself in stakeholder engagement. There's a lot of great material out there on how to actually really strategically get stakeholders on board. But if that fails, then just yeah, vote with your feet and and walk out of there and
Yeah.
find somewhere where it's more fulfilling and things are being done kind of for the right reasons, you know?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Sometimes we might not know the reasons behind some business goals, right? Business strategy that was
Hmm.
chosen by our stakeholder. Maybe there is a seed of truth. However, in many cases, if you feel powerless and if you're not satisfied, then yeah, we have one life, I guess. So yeah, but this topic is extremely exciting, and I think it's connected a little bit to, I'm gonna quote you from your podcast. So let's see if you remember this, saying this in the past. But you mentioned once that to create an experience for other people to engage with, you have to be engaged yourself.
Yes.
Is there any, like, what is the right approach to engaging yourself with the content topic that you are not a subject matter expert in, for instance? What if I have a task which is quite challenging in terms of creating content that I'm not fully professional with? So, is there any
Hmm.
that you can suggest?
Yes. It's about your why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, why is that content being created? So, like, what does it serve that people are learning that content? And maybe you have to ask that why a few times, but ultimately, you should be aligned with a common purpose with the learner. So at some point, even though you may have different job functions and right, different responsibilities, but it's about looking for that common purpose and saying we are together in this organization or in this constellation of organizations. We are together trying to serve this purpose and create this ultimate impact. And I think that is, yeah, how you do it for yourself. And you have to, yeah, you have to engage with yourself to do that. And I get it. A lot of people are in jobs where it's actually hard
Mhm.
to, this the kind of idea of the great resignation. People are just like sort of giving up on their jobs because they're just not fulfilled there. Um, but I think that but I think this is going to come out. I think then the training isn't going to be as meaningful and impactful as it could be because the team isn't engaged, and it can't all be on the person, on the
Mhm.
individual to do that, right? So it's got to be there's a culture question, and culture, it's a big beast, and you got to wrestle that one. You're not going to be a lot of people won't be in a position to influence the culture of their company. You're like in a major way over a short period of time. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but I guess it all boils down to the topic of your own internal motivation. If you are truly inspired by what you are doing, then you're going to try to find a way to engage with the topic and with the learner and with
Mhm.
stakeholders and align them all on, yeah, to make sure that everyone is at the same table.
Yes,
However,
yes.
sometimes there are circumstances, and let's not sound too pessimistic. However, this is the probably the ultimate goal of learning and development, to serve purposes and to find the common ground for the learning material to truly matter, what you mentioned, to have an impact on
Mhm.
the activities.
But yeah.
Is
I'm
that
really picking up an interesting thread here from you, though. It's like there is this, like it sounds like there really is like uh, a real unmet need here around the kind of the L&D environment for this, how to really get fulfillment for the L&D professionals,
yes?
um, in making this kind of impactful content. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a really big topic to discuss too, and
yeah,
I think that many of us have similar issues to talk about. But
yes,
once you find that, what everything that we've been talking about, I think that it's the journey to truly that truly matters. So
yes.
love to cover this topic. You mentioned several times already emotional journeys. So we are talking
Hmm.
about knowledge, sharing knowledge. We are people's people. We are in charge of education, transferring learning materials, or creating learning materials, managing learning impact. And in all of this that I managed, that I've just mentioned, there you would probably appeal to the logical side, right? Knowledge, it has
Hmm.
to be feasible.
Hmm.
So why
Yes.
don't we focus on emotions above the knowledge?
Yes. Because, and this isn't just coming from me, there is good peer-reviewed science on this stuff, that the um like the emotions just come first. So as a human being, when you're responding and reacting to your environment, your lizard brain, your amygdala is the first thing to react and will put you into an emotional state. And from there, your thoughts will arise and are
Mhm.
created. Now, I'm not a professional psychologist, but what this means is that um, if you are in an environment where you're feeling threatened, then you are going to close down and you're not going to be open to experience. So there is this correlation between positive emotional states and being and openness to experience. And if you want the learning to happen, then you need the learners to be open to the material. And they're only going to be open if you've managed to create a positive emotional state for them. It's not just about like, okay, we make everyone yay, and
Mhm, mhm.
then and then we deliver the goods, right? So it is a little bit more sophisticated than that because you can work in like waves. So you can work in like up and down in through kind of emotional waves to kind of create a pace and a tone. And this is like you know about flow from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's this I can't believe I attempted that, but he is a psychologist who basically developed this idea about flow, which is that you're in a state of flow when you're somewhere balanced between the level of challenge
Mhm.
and the level and your level of skill are matched. And then you get into this state of flow. And if there's too much challenge, you become anxious. And if there's not enough challenge, then you become bored. And flow is this space in between. But it's not really a straight line. You're kind of wobbling between these two to be in a state of flow. And yeah, so this is why these are we're talking about emotions here. We're talking about boredom, we're talking about anxiety. Um, and yeah, these come first. And then the thinking, the rational side, if
Mhm.
there is such a thing, right? I mean, even what is described as rational has emerged from emotion anyway. So yeah,
Yes,
that's
yeah,
why we lead with that.
absolutely. And if you dive deeper, you truly see behind each and every action emotional aspect first over the rational.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I also love the example. It's not just that to make everyone yay. For instance, if you're hosting a webinar, it's actually not that difficult to make everyone, have this positive attitude, uh,
Mhm,
and, to create a game or anything. But it's not about experience. It's about having a nice mood to do something which
mhm,
is maybe informal,
mhm,
right? But to this art of setting everyone at the pace in order to perceive the material, this is a true art for me at least.
mhm.
Are there any
Yes.
tools and tactics that you recommend to navigate learners or individuals in the proper states as you mentioned them?
Yeah. I mean, there's a kind of like if we talk about like the openness to experience, then really like something that we always do at the Chaos Pilot. I mean, you've heard it before. It's this idea of connection before content.
Mhm.
So you need to create a safe space because people aren't going to be open. They're not going to be open to learning, and they're not going to be open to be sharing their own insights um, unless they feel comfortable and able to talk. So you've got to create that safe space. And one of the ways that you can do this is this idea of connection before content. So you just connect the people with each other. You connect them with yourself, whoever is doing the facilitation. So it's about creating a learning, a cohort that has a binding between it. They see each other as human beings, and then once you've done that, then move into the material. Um, there's another one, like quite often, I think what people will experience in this kind of scenario is that there's different levels of seniority in a room, right?
Mhm.
And so people are afraid to speak up because of the senior person and what they might think of them, but also that that person might be seen as being an expert, and we don't want to, and so they end up other person doing all the talking and all the kind of the interactions happens there. I mean, this is like something that happens in meetings a lot,
Yes, yes.
and yeah, there's a lovely technique which actually comes from I mentioned Simon earlier at the top of this show, but it
Mhm.
comes from a training that he runs in creating learning spaces, and it's called taking the expert out of the room, and it's basically doing an exercise with the group where their expertise is kind of neutralized because you set a challenge where everyone is going to be equally good or equally bad, or it's going to be completely different who has the high skills and who has the low skills, like whatever, blowing bubbles with bubble gum or something like this. And so you use this as a way of changing this kind of interpersonal dynamic of who the expert is, before you then move forward with the actual kind of learning content, the learning material.
Mm.
There's two little ones. I actually have one more. If we've got time for one more on that.
Yeah, of course.
I
I'd
was
love
just
to.
also thinking, I was just thinking about like, but there's also this idea of not of it not all being yay, like maybe you need a bit of anxiety. So you're going to set some challenges which are hard, but you just have to make sure that you've got a pathway for the person to be able to solve that challenge. So then you're moving in this kind of, oh, I'm uncomfortable because I don't know how to do this, and then I'm solving it, and then I'm feeling good. And that's sort of you do the emotion on that first, and then create those exercises that are going to deliver on that after.
Yes, I assume it all depends on the audience that you have and how many, unexpected circumstances that will face during
Yeah.
the training. You would truly have to adapt, maybe use your intuition if you're up for that. But it's interesting how much time we talk right now about expertise, and that most of the times it's actually on the way of learning something new, unfortunately. So that's also another topic of discussion. However, I'd love to also quote you. So you mentioned a lot, several times we've talked about the involving learners into the design process. And
Mhm.
this is also
Yeah.
something which is truly interesting and inspiring because, for instance, instructional design frameworks, they're super straightforward, easy. You can't return to the previous step just because it's already done, right? So we're not very flexible in
Mhm.
this aspect. What about involving learners? So how do you do that and maintain your own work agenda at the same time? So you have to work and you have to do what you do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have a responsibility to carry everyone through those stage gates
Mhm.
as the leader of some kind of educational um, material training course. So, but I mean, I talk about like co-creation a lot because all experiences are co-creations. So the actual experience that is happening to the person who is sitting there at the table or whatever it is. And they came with their state of mind. They brought it into the room. Whatever happened to them this morning, they had an argument, or they spilled their eggs down their shirt, or they missed the bus, and that person brings that into the room. And so the experience that they're having, the learning experience that they're having, is like half made by them, maybe more, and then whatever is coming from your side, from you. So um, this idea there of like involving them is, or the co-creation, it's more about this idea of, well, setting some preconditions so that somehow you try to bring people to a certain kind of level and
Mhm.
bring people to a place where they're all in the same place to then have that learning experience. And then, so this is more, that's the beginning of it. But then I think what you're asking is more about like how are they involved in the learning? Like how can they be involved in the learning themselves?
Yes, yes, yes.
And there's this thing, like I don't know, I use this, like you probably use this term as well. Like if I'm hosting an event or something, I would say, oh, and we've got Mary from Bergen who's coming to share some insights about tourism, experiences in tourism or whatever. But I actually don't believe in this idea of sharing insights. I
Mhm.
don't think I can really share an insight. The insight is what the learner has themselves. So that's what an insight is. It's when like it's coming from within them. And what you want to be doing is that's what I mean by like this co-creation is you want to set the conditions for these insights to happen. And you do that by getting people to move around, by getting people to do like play roles. Um, you want the skills and knowledge to become kind of embodied through their own action.
Mhm.
And I've had this myself. I was in a training when I mean, I literally sat there and a concept had been introduced the day before, and then it was brought up again, and I was literally like jumping out of my seat, like, oh my God, I get it. And it happened because we'd literally been standing and living those experiences. So I do something. So I run this training. I mean, it's a training in experience design, so it has to be experiential in itself. But part of it is, I mean, I don't want to do any spoilers in case someone wants to join it. But there is a part where we ask teams to do something that they don't know how to do. And we put them in a group of four and say, right, you are now need to go and do this and deliver this for the rest of us. And we haven't actually covered that material yet, but they have to come up with something. They have to deliver. And in doing that, from the little that they already know, they have huge insights
Mhm.
around how to design experiences because we're forcing them into like really thinking about it for themselves. And I love it. It's like my favorite part of the training is this bit where people are really like they're doing the learning themselves.
Mhm.
Um, we're setting the frames for it, not standing at the front telling them what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
That sounds extremely insightful. And in terms of, I love what you mentioned, that they play roles, right? So, what I can relate with personally, maybe it's not directly connected. However, just my own personal experience, I learned English when I had to teach English. So I actually
right.
understood the language when I had to teach someone else English. So that's something that I guess is when you are put in these circumstances and you need to come up with something, you need to understand, learn, come up with something new. That sounds truly wonderful. Summing
Mhm.
up, I'd love to get to know your opinion. How do you see the experience design, learning experience design evolving in the future? How do you think it will shape L&D world in particular, if that will,
Yeah.
if there will be more experience in learning?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's kind of like there's two like when we've been talking about like designing experiences for learning, and there's two kind of main places where that situations that I see that happens in. One is where people want to learn, they're electing to learn something for themselves, they've signed themselves up for something. And the other one is in like an organizational context, which I guess most of this kind of learning and development is where people don't necessarily want to go and learn that thing. They're just told they have to learn that thing, or maybe it's offered and they elect to do it, but it's a part of a company program. I think this is really this side of it is going to. I mean, where people are trying to learn for themselves, that's growing anyway. But I think within organizations, it's going to become really interesting how as technology like change speeds up. The way people have to do things in organizations is changing faster. So organizations need their people to learn things faster and faster. And I suspect that the shape of a lot of people's jobs will become more gamified in a way, in
Mhm.
that when you are in an organization, it is like a continual experience of leveling up. So it's and so organizations are going to have to engage their employees like this whole it's going to become part of an employee experience that you join an organization and you are kind of in a game. And that game involves you continually leveling up, going up to getting credits and going up through levels. And so I think going to become very integrated into what an employee's experience is. And I think it's going to become very attractive, or people will be attracted to those jobs which have the most integrated employee experience, where they are increasing in their competence. I mean, which is one of the pillars of intrinsic motivation, right? So it's competence and autonomy and relatedness, connectedness. And so I have a feeling that experience is going to become really a key part of that employee experience will become a key part of learning development, and the employee experience will really come together and it'll be a unified thing.
Yes, which
Yeah.
makes our job by default also. probably a bit different than it is now. And
Mhm.
that makes it super exciting.
Mm.
So thank you so much, Tim, for sharing your insights. And this conversation has truly been inspiring. That brings the end of today's episode, Emotional Journeys in Learning and Design. It's been really great to learn about the design and co-creation with the learners and how it can transform L&D in particular, even though we didn't focus directly on L&D because you don't want to be called an L&D person. However, I see the potential in, and I think that all of our listeners will agree that this has truly been transformative way to think and approach our work as an L&D specialist. So hope you enjoyed it. And this episode was brought to you by Eli, a platform dedicated to helping educators create impactful video content that enhances learning. And if you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe to EdTalks and don't miss the future episodes on topics like this one. And if you found today's discussion inspiring, please share it with your network. And of course, we would be so happy to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.